We're just 6 days out from Denver Broncos training camp. And with Sean Payton coming in here and eliminating the selfish, me-first culture that has festered in this organization's locker room for the last 6 seasons, you know that if there are any holdovers from the previous regime who are not pulling their weight in training camp, then they will be either traded or just flat out cut. Everyone's going to be given a level playing field this offseason and is going to be given an equal opportunity to make an impact for this team. But at the same time, if you don't take advantage of that opportunity and capitalize, then that opportunity is going to go to somebody else. I can't think of a player who fits this bill more than veteran tight end Alberto Cuebanam. Alberto was actually called out by Sean Payton earlier this offseason, who said that he needs to be more consistent in his game in order to make an impact. Alberto first caught the scouts of Denver Broncos' attention when they were looking at tape of Drew Lock when he was coming out of Missouri. Alberto stood out as a speedy vertical threat tight end who had really good chemistry with Drew. So, a year after Lock was drafted, the Broncos decided to use a 4th-round pick on Alberto Cuebanam in 2020. Now, he struggled to get on the field in the first part of his career. He made his NFL debut 6 weeks into his rookie season in a game against the New England Patriots, and ultimately, he was developing a bit of that connection again with Drew Lock before he tore his ACL midway through the season after just playing in 4 games in a Week 9 contest against the Atlanta Falcons. Coming over here and looking at Alberto's rookie season, he caught 11 passes for 121 yards, 11 yards per reception, which is the highest of his career to date, and a touchdown. So nothing to write home about in those first 4 games, but still he was starting to get his feet wet in the NFL and was developing that connection with Drew Lock. Then he did come back in 2021. Although he missed 3 games because of a hamstring injury, he was developing a nice connection with not Drew Lock, but Teddy Bridgewater, who was our starting quarterback at the time. In 2021, Alberto had easily his best season of his career. He caught 33 passes for 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. And after the Broncos shipped away Noah Fant as part of the Russell Wilson trade, it was anticipated that Alberto was going to be the Broncos' starting tight end in 2022. Even after the Broncos decided to use a 3rd-round draft pick on Greg Dulcich coming out of UCLA, it was still anticipated that Alberto would have a really heavy role in the offense under year 1 of Russell Wilson and the only year of Nathaniel Hackett. That never came to fruition though. In training camp, Alberto ended up falling really far out of the good graces of the organization. I feel like the main reason he ended up falling so far was because of his lack of ability as a blocker. Alberto's somebody who, I'm just going to be honest, doesn't really put his best effort forward as a blocker. At least he really didn't throughout the first portion of his career, and that continued into training camp last year. Nathaniel Hackett ran a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets, and he had to ask his tight ends to block quite a bit in those situations. It's going to be a very similar ask of Sean Payton. Ultimately, Alberto Cuebanam got surpassed on the depth chart by both Eric Tomlinson and Eric Saubert, and he only played in 7 games last year. 2 of them were the final 2 games of the season, and those were really the only games where he saw significant action last season. But before Nathaniel Hackett got fired, Alberto just couldn't get on the field. I don't know if Alberto took a piss in Nathaniel Hackett's morning cornflakes or what, but for some reason, it almost felt personal between Nathaniel Hackett and Alberto Cuebanam. And in the last 2 games of the season, he actually did show some little bit of flashes of the old Alberto Cuebanam. So you have to wonder what kind of weapon he could have been in the passing game for Russell Wilson had he gotten on the field more. I also understand, though, where Nathaniel Hackett was coming from, because if you can't be a contributor as a blocker, then you really are not going to be able to fit in as a tight end in that offensive scheme. And it's going to be a very similar situation in this Sean Payton offense, where we're going to be running a lot of 12 or 13 personnel. So at the end of the day, I feel like the Broncos are going to give Alberto a chance, but if he isn't better as a blocker at the end of the day, then I don't care how big of a threat he is as a receiving tight end. You're not going to see the field in this offense in a tight end role. Now, there is a chance that they could potentially view Albert Okwuegbunam in a little bit of a different role and maybe use him as sort of a big slot receiver and take advantage of his speed in that way, because I feel like Alberto would make a much bigger impact if used as basically a big wide receiver instead of being asked to be a traditional tight end, because he's never going to fill that role. That's just not who he is. With Greg Dulcich expected to take a big step forward in his second year in the NFL, he is our bona fide starting tight end this season. Behind him, Chris Manhertz was brought in as a free agent from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has prior experience working with Sean Payton and company in New Orleans. And although Chris Manhertz was brought in to be a blocking tight end, he was a sneaky good receiving tight end in those past couple of years with Jacksonville, and prior to that with his time in Carolina. So Chris Manhertz could be a bigger contributor for the Denver Broncos as a second tight end than a lot of people, including myself, are giving him credit for. Right now, Adam Troutman is also listed ahead of Albert Okwuegbunam on the depth chart. Adam Troutman was drafted by the New Orleans Saints a few years ago, and he ultimately struggled last season in particular after Sean Payton was gone to see an elevated role in that Saints offense. He got surpassed by guys such as Jawan Johnson there in New Orleans, so it really wasn't the right fit for him after Sean Payton was gone. So now he ultimately gets reunited with Sean Payton, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Sean Payton views Adam Troutman and how he gets used in this offense. So we got two of those big reinforcements brought in this offseason, both of whom who have experience with Sean Payton. So Alberto really is the odd man out here. We also have got Nate Adkins, an undrafted free agent from last season, and Tommy Hudson, a veteran free agent as well. So the Broncos have some pieces at the tight end position, and when you take a look at things and evaluate where they sit right now, Alberto could be the odd man out here. I don't know what the Broncos would net from Alberto in a potential trade package, maybe nothing more than a conditional 6th round pick or something like that. I don't think that teams are going to be rushing to make a trade for Alberto, but if there is some team out there that views that they need some more depth, either as a big slot receiver or just at the tight end position in general, then the Denver Broncos could be a team that they could call to inquire about Alberto's availability. So I'm curious, Broncos country, after evaluating things and where the Denver Broncos sit at the tight end position, do you feel like Alberto is an expendable piece? And if so, do you feel like we'd be able to net anything for him in a trade? Or do you think that the Broncos would have to just flat out cut him? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts on this as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are two free and easy ways to show your support. It helps tell the old algorithm to push us out and it helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. And until next time, guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.